Behind the Curtain with Jack Berkman.
Welcome to another edition of Behind the Curtain with Jack Berkman. Remember, I am not a talking head. I am not a journalist. I am not a reporter. I am a lobbyist, and I walk the halls of Congress each and every day of the week. I go to events. I go to parties. I go to cocktail events, and I get information hot off the presses that nobody else has. Not CNN, not MSNBC, not even Fox. We bring you things never before heard. What a show we've got. We'll be plunging into the elections. We'll be talking Trump, Mueller, and the pardons. We'll be talking the upcoming, now on, North Korean summit. And we'll be talking about the Donald's wonderful attempts to trim the bureaucracy and get rid of some of the laziest people in the world, federal bureaucrats. The Donald is doing a good job. He's fighting a very tough battle. First up, we have Tom Del Beccaro. Did I get that right, Tom? Former chair of the California Republican Party, Forbes contributor, lawyer, all-around great pundit. Did I get the name right?
Yes, you did. Thanks so much for having me on.
Del Beccaro, we got it. Well, okay, so now, Trump, if you look at what's going on now, I noticed this week there's a certain consistency in the establishment media. Good Morning America, the Today Show, CBS, The Early Show. They're all using this phrase, above the law, which comes right from a Democratic DNC talking points memo, and now is being used all over the establishment media all week long. What do you make of this?
Well, they can't help themselves. They love this Russia story, but the real story related to this at this point is it doesn't do them any good in polling, and it doesn't do them any good in races. The economy's doing well. Foreign policy around the world is shaping up. America's strength is restored. You got potentially great news from North Korea. And so the Democrats are continuing to sound like they have a tin ear, and they don't have the wave that they wanted. That's what we saw in the recent elections. In fact, it makes good sense for Trump to every once in a while bring up Russia and let the Democrats fulminate and foam at the mouth, because that distracts voters. Voters don't like that. They want to know what the Democrats will do going forward. They don't have that message yet. And so, as a result,
Trump is starting to remind me a little bit of our friend Frank Underwood on House of Cards, minus the murder, minus the killing. But he's got a little bit of that crazy like a fox in that he's very good at sucking people in. He did this to Hillary. I think he's doing it again now. It's almost like Trump is very bright, and he sucked the Democrats in deeper and deeper and deeper on the Mueller thing, and then he leaves them in the lurch. And suddenly now the Democrats realize one reason they can't have a blue wave is because they picked the wrong issues. Now, part of that is they can't go economic issues because the country's doing very well. So in some sense, they're trapped. But they had a lot of things they could have talked about, but they have made the same mistake. They said they wouldn't, but they made the same mistake, it seems to me, that Hillary made in 2016, and that is a complete focus on Trump and Mueller and the saga. Am I right?
Yeah, you are right. The economy is not benefiting them at all because the jobs are there. The Democrats could have and should, if they wanted to do better in the fall, be talking about things that the Republicans haven't done, like fix health care. But instead, you're right, Trump lures them in with discussions of Russia. And even more importantly than that, what Trump does is continue to move his agenda forward. Just listen to the topics you're talking about today. He moves his agenda forward and does something new almost every week. And the Democrats are left arguing about last week while he's on to a new topic. That is great leadership.
I like it. The Democrats are a step behind. They're left arguing about, I'm going to steal that. May I steal that, Tom? I plan to actively plagiarize that, if I may. I love that. I'm going to incorporate that into my repertoire. But Mueller, it would seem to me the broader problem they're having is that Mueller is running out of runway. So not only are they're going down the rat hole with this topic that they can't win with, the Mueller saga, but now Mueller himself is essentially in trouble because he has nothing. All this with Cohen, all of this with Manafort, and there's really nothing there. And even people like Schumer and Pelosi realize that Mueller is running out of runway.
Yeah, well, that's true. And in fact, what Mueller's doing is staggeringly unethical. Just like when he was involved with the Whitey Bulger investigation and 4 days afterwards knew that those 4 guys were innocent, he kept going, and for 40 years he has hid the truth. The moment he took this job, he knew from Clapper, Brennan, and Comey that there was no evidence of collusion, yet he is pushed forward. And he continues in this Captain Ahab mentality. And when the Democrats sign on to it, Adam Schiff and all the rest, they are tone deaf. The bigger news that's going to come out in the next 60 days, the Inspector General's report, which will be a lot sooner than that, but the next 60 days are going to be, on the left, are going to be dominated about Hillary back in the news, about how she was let off the hook. And incredibly, Bill Clinton's got a book out. This is terrible timing for the Democrats. They don't want to talk about the Clintons, but now we're going to have
it really now appears that you have an open conspiracy between Obama, Loretta Lynch, Hillary Clinton, James Comey, the FBI, and others. Even the Democrats are finding it hard to deny that, because Comey openly changed the standard. I couldn't believe that day in June 2 years ago now, where he essentially changed the standard from negligent to willful.
Yeah, and at my website, politicalvanguard.com, I lay out the entire timeline. It's called the Timeline for Truth, politicalvanguard.com, where I go over this. And you're right. It was July 5th in the morning, 10:30
I
Eastern.
wasn't too far off.
And at 1:30 p.m. that day, Obama was out there campaigning with Hillary in South Carolina. That was no accident. He knew all along. April 10th, he talked about intent. He knew all along that they weren't going to indict her. So the next 30 days at least for the Democrats is going to be about the Clintons and how she got off the hook and how the Obama administration cut corners if it wasn't corrupt. That's terrible.
You know, to press the House of Cards analogy further, if I were Trump, what I might do is suck them in further by launching a grand jury investigation and maybe even indicting Hillary Clinton, because if you do that, you essentially will make her the nominee again, right? Because you've got a weak field. All she needs is continued visibility. She'll be the nominee. I would love to run against Hillary again. Maybe Trump needs to take care to keep her in the spotlight.
Well, keep in mind that at the start of the year, the generic congressional ballot showed big double-digit leads for the Democrats. But that really started to crater when Andrew McCabe was the center of the story. And when it came out that he committed 4 felonies and lied, it's been a straight line downward. Now we're going to get this 400-page Inspector General's report, which today's news, or the news of this week, is that Comey was an insubordinate. That is going to dominate the news. And Trump may need to do nothing at all. But again, for the Democrats, if the story is the Clintons, they're falling farther behind. The congressional generic ballot is tied. Given that there's more Democrats across the country registered than the Republicans, that's really bad news for the Democrats. And what you saw in California was that there wasn't a wave. There wasn't this anger that we've been told. The Latinos didn't come out and vote in anger against Trump. So putting all those things together, the Democrats have a lot to be worried about.
And to make matters worse, the economy gets better by the month. Trump announcing lowest ever Hispanic unemployment, lowest ever African American male unemployment, lowest ever, not lowest ever, but close to lowest ever female unemployment. I mean, the numbers are becoming almost optimal. If you're Pelosi, you can't even put out an economic press release because there's nothing to mention.
Well, she said that the good jobs report isn't enough. And by the way, we're still on the way up. 2 really important data points came out this week, that the highest ever number of job openings. That's a huge deal, because what that means is that business is expanding and is looking for people. That's why last week, 67% of Americans, or the week before, said that this is a good time to find a really good job. The NFIB, National Federation of Independent Businesses, highest ever recording for them of small businesses that are giving out wage increases. That tells you that this economic run we're in right now is actually still on the way up. And so for the next 3 to 4 months, the economy is going to be improving. That heads right into Election Day. In fact, in November and December, when I was pushing the tax reform bill, I said the strength or the burst of activity would happen in the second and third quarters of 2018. That's what we're finding. That's bad news for the Democrats if they thought they were going to take the House.
Tom Del Beccaro, former chair, California Republican Party, Forbes contributor, lawyer, pundit. Tom, thank you so much for your insights. We'll be back in a moment.
All the stories and controversies that no one talks about, but everyone should know about.
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking.
Behind the Curtain with Jack Berkman.
Remember, if you want to take it behind the curtain, you call us, 703-795-5364, 703-795-5364. Operator standing by. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, all times Eastern Standard Time. Taking your emails now as we come into the 21st, coming into the 20th century, never the 21st, at least not yet the 21st. I don't like it much. Jack Berkman 2016 at Gmail, Jack Berkman 2016 at Gmail. Same number, same email. If you know anything about the Seth Rich murder mystery, we will never quit on the Rich family or the city of Washington. Call us 703-795-5364, anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world. If you know anything about what happened to Seth Rich. Later in the show, we're going to get into Social Security and Medicare. Paul Ryan promised to fix it, but you don't hear him talking about it anymore. People do that frequently when they come to power. But first up, John Heubusch, Executive Director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute, and a longtime professional aide in Republican politics, congressional and White House. John, welcome.
Hey, great to be with you.
Now, you've done some interesting writing lately where you take the upcoming Trump North Korea visit and you compare it to Reagan and Gorbachev in '86 in Iceland. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. While you won't find two presidents any more different in terms of style and approach to the way they speak, communicate, and manage the White House. There's a lot of there are a ton of similarities in terms of their situations as president. And we just watched Trump walk away from the table with North Korea, and then succeed in bringing them back to the table. It's the very same thing occurred with Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev when Reagan was attempting to eliminate Soviet nuclear weapons in Western Europe. So very, very similar situations, different presidents, but history somewhat repeats itself.
Okay, well, we may have different views. I don't know what your bottom line view is. I don't think Trump should be going forward with this because I think we're legitimating the Rocket Man. I would never do it. But for our purposes today, I'm more interested. Okay, let's flesh out this analogy a little further. So going back to the 80s, Gorbachev, he was on again, off again, walked away from Reagan. Reagan had to play it. Refresh me as to what happened in 85, 86 with that sequence.
Well, if you recall, Reagan had four major summits with Gorbachev before it was all over, and they were in Moscow, Geneva, Washington, and Reykjavik. But Reykjavik was the one that kind of broke the camel's back. It's the one in which Mikhail Gorbachev, put the carrot in front of the United States and essentially agreed to eliminate all sorts of nuclear missiles and a great amount of threat to the United States. But the price that had to be paid for the talks to go forward involved Reagan having to give up on his whole approach to the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI. And he saw that as someday providing an umbrella to protect Americans. He was strongly against this whole concept of mutually assured destruction where we were holding each other hostage via nuclear weapons. So the third summit in Reykjavik was the key one, and that's where Reagan stepped away from the table. But I have to say to you, Jack, I could not agree with you more from the standpoint of Kim Jong-un. I don't. While I'm happy that Trump has opened the door to potential denuclearization of North Korea, I'm very highly skeptical that that we're going to that he's going to succeed to the extent that the media is driving expectations he might. I think
you're right. I think we're kindred spirits here, John. I mean, with Reagan and Gorbachev, I mean, there were desired outcomes. There was a way to win. There was a way both parties could win. We had clear goals. Reagan knew what he wanted to do. He knew maybe outcome A, B, or C would be acceptable. The problem with negotiating with the terrorist is, how do you compromise? Any compromise, it's like the Iranian situation where you leave them with a nuclear capacity. And this is the danger. I just don't see what the outcome could be. I mean, this is part and parcel of Trump. He can't resist the temptation to hog all the media oxygen in the room, and that's a strategy that's worked for him, so I get that. But on the other hand, strategically, I just don't see how the United States can win at a summit like this. What could be? Let me ask you this. We both agree, but seeing it from the other point of view, is there an outcome that could be a winning outcome for the U.S. coming out of this?
Well, let me address that, but in the process, let me just say a couple of quick things. First, you would not find Ronald Reagan in this situation, right? He would not ever have agreed to meet with a dictator of a small country like this for any reason. They would have had to completely disarm for Reagan to give him the honor of meeting with them. So in that respect, he's very much, Trump and he are very much not alike. And I personally believe, Jack, that the whole reason that not just the United States, but anyone is talking to North Korea right now is because he's, for the first time in history, Kim Jong-un and North Korea have a nuclear weapon that they can fire off at the United States. I mean, he's finally got leverage after 60, 70 years. And we're experiencing that process right now, and it's not pretty. I don't think it's a good thing that the President of the United States is sitting down with Kim Jong-un, but we are where we are, right? So, but now to your question, what can we get out of this? I think what we're going to get out of it is we're going to be convinced that there's nothing more important to the United States than to continue what Trump has started, and that's what Reagan did, and that is continue to build up our military. I think we're going to find.
I think you and I agree. My view on this is there are two options. One, you could end up using force with North Korea. Two, I think a better option is a bilateral deal with China, John, where we essentially, although the Chinese won't want to do this, they don't want the cost of occupation, I think we should invite the Chinese in, strike a deal, eliminate the North Korean regime, bring them down to the 52nd parallel, and sign a new treaty, and that's that. The South Koreans won't like it, the Japanese won't like it, but I think it eliminates this. What Trump is going to do now is make some kind of a deal with a rocket man where he essentially agrees to inspectors like the Iranian thing, which is just another form of disaster, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a creative solution where I think you're onto something, and I really mean that. Is look, we both know North Korea is nothing but a wholly owned subsidiary of China as we speak, right? I mean, North Korea, their very lifeblood and existence are based upon China's cooperation, and so if Xi of China wants a deal between North Korea and the United States, well, maybe we get one. Whether he really wants that or not is a whole other question. I mean, I'm obviously North Korea is leverage against the United States for China. So I still just remain skeptical that we're going to clear this all up in a few meetings with our president.
John, I got to mention your book, The Shroud Conspiracy. I'm going to recommend everyone your new book, The Shroud Conspiracy. They got to see it. John Heubusch, Executive Director, Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. John, thank you so much for all your insights. We'll be back in a moment.
This is a universe where everything is depicted as a Washington Post political cartoon.
Behind the Curtain with Jack Berkman.
Welcome back. Remember, if you want to take it behind the curtain, you call us 703-795-5364, 703-795-5364. Operators 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday. Taking now your emails, jackberkman2016 at gmail.com. jackberkman2016@gmail. Remember, same number, same email. If you know anything about the Seth Rich murder mystery, we've got big events planned for the second anniversary, the second memorial of Seth's death, July 10th, 2018. We will reveal to you first, to my audience, what will happen on July 10th to commemorate the second anniversary of Seth's death. Later in the show, we'll be talking with our good friend Greg Corombos about Social Security, Medicare, and the continuing potential bankruptcy of the United States over these two issues. That's right. You didn't know your country could go bankrupt, but we are well on our way. First up, Stephen Nelson, great White House reporter for the Washington Examiner. Stephen, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, our topic here is Trump's war on the bureaucracy, which I love. You know, I always tell federal workers are, I'm sure you share this, they're one of my absolute pet peeves for many, many years. I think of my friend Alan, we won't use his real name, who works Department of Labor. He's an ALJ. He's a judge there. Good friend from law school. And I think he's got his work week down to about 6 hours between external commuting and work at home and telecommuting, that, all of these bogus scams that constitute the federal workforce. He now has his work week down to about half a day, for which I think he gets $190,000 or $200,000 a year. I'm not sure he remembers where he works at this point. It's like getting interest income. There are lots of folks like that in the federal bureaucracy, are there not?
Yeah, I know a lot of us who live in D.C. have friends who are similar to yours. I don't know if I have any friends who are quite so lazy, but they're certainly well paid, and they have unusual job security, and that's one of the things that President Trump is really hitting hard here with his recent.
What's he doing? What's the president doing? A lot of our listeners don't know. I haven't really followed the mechanics of this. What's he doing with executive order? What has he done?
So the issue that the reason why so many people aren't aware of this is because they were announced on a Friday of a holiday weekend at 4:30 p.m. But President Trump's executive orders regarding labor unions and the federal workforce are really pretty significant. They cut out an estimated $100 million a year in subsidies for labor unions by forcing them to pay rent, by limiting their perks regarding how much time federal workers can spend doing labor union work. Currently, there are hundreds who are just doing 100% union work and getting paid for their federal jobs. The orders also instruct the various agencies to renegotiate their labor contracts, their agreements, to make them so that employees can be more speedily fired. There are plenty of examples out there of poor performing workers.
Trump's done a good job, but one thing we should tell our viewers, he is constrained and confined by statute, right? The overarching law, even though Trump is doing pretty much everything he can is only a small part of what needs to be and should be done because he's fighting statutes that he can't overcome, correct?
Yes, well, certainly everything is a lot. That's quite a bit. He did do quite a bit of things with his executive orders, but he can't do everything. There's the 1978 Civil Service Reform Act, which is a really foundational piece of legislation, which is a steep lift for him to try to reform. Members of his administration hope that's going to happen, and they feel that there's some bipartisanship, some opportunity to actually have. Yeah. The
politics of this basically has always been what the Maryland and Virginia, particularly Republicans in the Virginia delegation, have to fight for federal workers. So we lose our friend Barbara Comstock and others like her. We lose those types of people, so we can't get to 218 to change the law. And maybe somebody like Paul Ryan is now too far to the left to even want to change the law. This is something Congress should be working on, but just never is, right?
Yes, it's something that people like to talk about, but it's something that doesn't seem to ever actually happen. Of course, the tax reform, a similar thing. People talked about that for decades, and it happened to a significant degree just recently. So there is of course, room for optimism. Who knows if this is actually going to...
I'm sure you remember well Ronald Reagan's quip. You're an expert in this issue. His old quip, he said, we better scale back the Department of Agriculture because if trends continue by the end of the 1990s, he said in the early 80s, there will be more people working for the Department of Agriculture than are employed in agriculture in the United States. And I would suspect today, I haven't looked at these numbers, but I would suspect in year 2018, it is a virtual certainty that the Department of Agriculture employs more people than are currently employed in agriculture with all of the innovation out there. Am I right?
Oh, gosh, you put me on the spot with that one. I
bet I am. And then when you look at something like Department of Energy with 67,000 employees, let's say that again, 67,000 and change in the Department of Energy. I'm almost exhausted hearing that number, aren't you?
That's a lot of people.
67,000. I mean, to do what? What could they do? And then you have, some of this stuff, for instance, what does the Department of Commerce do? I think the answer really is almost nothing. The only significant thing they do might be export control, but others can do that. You've got USTR to do that. The Department of Commerce is this giant building in the middle of the city filled with people that does nothing. The Department of the Interior, HUD. HUD's been garbage for years. Interior's garbage. What do these things do? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. All right, let me ask you this. What more needs to be done? Where does Trump go from here? Is it worthwhile? Let me ask you this. If Trump wins the second term, looks like he will, should this be a front and center second term issue where you bash federal workers? I think there's a lot of politics. I think Americans love the bashing of federal workers the way Reagan did. Should Trump be doing more of that in speeches, highlighting Joe and Bill and Alan and showing these fat, lazy people laying around and put them on film and show the videos to the public? We can vilify these people. Shouldn't we be doing more of that politically?
It's interesting. I think that the messaging really hasn't been settled on for this issue. A lot of the senior members of Trump's administration who I spoke to for the article, they used respectful words for federal workers. He said, it's just the rare rotten apple who, we need to toss out quicker. Talked about it they're very honorable. There are great opportunities to improve underperforming workers. I
think that's the wrong approach. I think we should do what Reagan did. I think we need the Reagan image and even go further. I think we should find, videos of fat, lazy people laying around and haven't been to the office in 3 weeks. And I think we should vilify these people. I think they're easy targets. I think it works with swing voters. I think it would be great for the base. I think this is a Republican issue waiting to happen. And not only that, I think it's an issue that will play well in places like California and libertarian areas where you don't want to talk about social issues. I think it's a wonderful issue. Who would support federal workers? The only people who would support them are they themselves living in Maryland and Virginia, right? If you're in California or Pennsylvania, you have no care or concern for federal workers whom you believe are overpaid. I just see it as a winning issue. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's a wonderful winning issue.
It seems like one that it would be a natural topic for President Trump to get aggressive with. I can't address why they did this, but they rolled out these very tough executive orders, though, on a Friday afternoon. They didn't put a whole lot of...
why would they... Okay, why do you dump the story on a Friday into the weekend? Why do they want to kill a story like that? Even I know you don't dump stories on... even my press conferences aren't held on Friday. Why would the president do it Friday at 4:30?
That's really a bit of a mystery. They claim simply that that the documents are ready to be signed. That seems doubtful, though.
Yeah, very doubtful.
He has a lot on his plate, but these orders did quite a bit. I'm not sure if there's some element of trying to, catch people off guard, downplay it, and get a significant.
If I'm betting, Stephen, I'll take you behind the curtain here. If I'm betting, and I don't have information as to this, but because I don't follow this issue, but I should. If I'm betting, I think there's a deal in place with some Virginia Republicans. I think Trump may have made a deal. This is the kind of issue you maybe make a deal on. Like take our friend Barbara Comstock in the Northern Virginia. For those of you who don't know, that's a powerful Republican in a suburban district. She's a conservative, but she has to play the role of a moderate because she's in a fairly liberal district, Democratic district. She wins as a Republican. It's tough, right? But Trump probably made a deal to keep her in power. They may have needed her vote on taxes or some such, and they said, what do you want? Of course, the only thing she wants is protection for federal federal workers, right? So she can take that home. My guess is a deal like that was made. Do you have any intel in that regard?
No, and her office just didn't respond to my request for comment for the story.
I'm sure there's a dirty... I mean, I'd do the same thing if I were Barbara, right? You have to. Oh, Stephen Nelson, White House reporter, Washington Examiner. Thanks for enlightening us on Trump's war on the bureaucracy. If we're real lucky, we'll have you back again. Well, coming up next, our friend Greg Corombos, news director here at Radio America, joins us to talk all about the problem of Social Security that is plaguing our country. Stay tuned.
All the stories and controversies that no one talks about, but everyone should know about.
Why don't you get a toupee with some brains in it?
Behind the Curtain with Jack Berkman.
Welcome back. Remember, if you want to take it behind the curtain, you call us 703-795-5364, 703-795-5364. Taking your emails now, jackberkman2016@gmail. Same number. Same email if you know anything about the Seth Rich murder mystery. And remember, on July 10th, 2018, the second anniversary of Seth's death, we have a surprise, a memorial and a candlelight vigil commemorating Seth. We'll tell you more about that, and you will hear it here before you see it announced anything else, because you are the special listeners and viewers of Behind the Curtain. Special welcome, as always, to all of our viewers on Newsmax television across the country and across the world. Thank you for joining us. Greg Corombos, welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Good to be with you again.
Well, it's wonderful to have you, News Director Radio America, host of 3 Martini Lunch, which if our listeners and viewers haven't seen that and heard that, you must. Well, Greg, let's talk about one of my favorite topics, or not so favorite topics, and that is Social Security. Now, basically, and Medicare too, but mainly Social Security. I mean, we all know the reality with this. It was created in 1935. The retirement age needs to be raised. There is an easy set of fixes. The solution is an easy A through E. We all know what to do, but we all lack the courage to do it. And I have just become, as you know, so disenchanted with my old friend Paul Ryan, who spent a lifetime, he spent 2 decades plus preaching about this, and as soon as he comes into power, what does he do? He does what every other person in power in both parties has done in the last 30 years, and that is forget about the issue. And now when you say the word Social Security to Paul Ryan, he looks as though he's never heard those words and doesn't know anything about it.
Well, there's precedent for that, obviously. I mean, in the last 30 years, which you mentioned, let's just take that as a ballpark figure, the only person to even try to address Social Security was George W. Bush right after he got reelected. You probably remember that from 2005.
Yes,
took his political capital out for a spin in his first State of the Union address of his second term, wanted to take just a tiny sliver, a couple percentage points out of what you would pay into the Social Security taxes, allow you to invest that privately. And you would have thought that the entire financial system in this country was going right into the toilet.
Well, that happened 3 years later. That was 3 years later, but nonetheless.
Well, that had nothing to do with that, though. I mean, basically, everybody is encouraged to invest in the stock market system. But when he was encouraging people to take 2-3% of their Social Security taxes and put it in there to grow at a faster rate than what Social Security will pay out in the out years, his own party completely abandoned him.
I don't want to be cruel, but I mean, what is going on in the country? I mean, first of all, what is so terrible about raising a few years in the retirement age? I mean, are there that many people who hate life, hate their job, can't wait to retire and die? I mean, I don't get this. I mean, what in the world is going on in this country? I mean, America was never like this before.
Well, I think you have people who don't want to either work longer or haven't saved as well as they should have at that point. And usually any idea that comes out like this says, hey, if you're 55 or older, nothing's going to change for you. It's only younger than that where we'll bump it up to 67, or some people want 70. Some people might even want it a little more. Other people have said, look, I know rich people have paid into this, but clearly some people, if you look at their tax returns, don't need Social Security benefits. We could save a little bit of money there, too. And ultimately what happens here is anytime you start talking about it, it doesn't really matter what the details of your plan are, Jack, but you see older Americans thinking, oh, somebody's about to toy with what I spent my whole life paying into. I don't trust them to tinker with this and not affect me in a negative way. And that's usually why it ends up getting abandoned, because people know those people vote.
Okay, let me ask you this now. If we take a look, are we sure that Trump voters Are we sure that Trump voters don't want Social Security reform? I mean, that's kind of an assumption. I wonder if there's poll data backing that up. I mean, I'm not so sure that's true. I think a lot of Trump, my instincts tell me, and I don't know if there's data supporting this one way or the other, but Trump voters, the Trump base might accept this. I mean, however, grudgingly, they won't be. I don't think they'll be excited about it, but I'm not sure they would oppose it. Do you know of any numbers? Are the numbers changing? What do we know about the data, if anything?
I don't. I just know that they're very loyal to this president who has said emphatically from day one of his campaign that he will not be touching an entitlement program.
See, what will happen with this? We all know what's going to happen. When Social Security goes broke, we're just going to raise taxes. We'll have a massive tax increase to fund it. You're just going to have, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, I think what you'll have is just they'll say, oh, well, we'll solve this problem with a 3 or 4% increase in the top two brackets, and that's it. And then, of course, that's a big cut of the economy. Ultimately, is that what will happen?
That's going to be the Democratic solution for this. And just to provide folks a little bit of context, hopefully they saw the headlines this week, and that's that the Social Security the funds are expected to go insolvent in 2034. For Medicare, it's 8 years earlier, just 8 years from now, 2026. But yes, I mean, that is going to be the argument from the left. They're going to say, look, this is being accelerated by the Trump tax cuts, which in the short term is true. They're obviously hoping that the growth from this and the increased revenues from an expanding economy is going to more than offset the loss of initial revenue on this. But that's going to be the explanation. You're going to have some folks talking, obviously, about cutting spending. Usually the folks that want to do that try to limit it to domestic spending, and that's not nearly enough. You've got to tackle the entitlements, which a decade from now, maybe even less than that now, will take up every dollar of all the revenue coming in. That's before you spend a dollar.
Say that again. Say that again so our viewers hear that. Say that again.
Yeah, exactly. For the major entitlement programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, a decade from now, with the rate of growth and everything we're experiencing right now, every dollar of projected revenue that comes into the federal government will be only to pay for that. And that might include interest on the debt, too. But if you want to pay for the military and all this other domestic programs, that's going to be deficit spending. It's just ballooning and getting worse.
The U.S. government is becoming nothing more than a shell for a couple of welfare programs. That's essentially all it is. You know, the tragic irony in all this is my instinct. So you take Social Security running out in 34 or 35. We still have 16 years. The tragic irony, my instincts tell me, if we did nothing more than, say, put half of it into the stock market, there would be ups and downs. But by 35, you probably would have solved most of the problem. Even now, with going to private investment, that's how much bang for the buck there is in really investing it. But even that we can't do. You might solve the whole problem without even tinkering with the retirement age. Am I right?
Well, the long-term prospects of the market have definitely borne that out over the years. Obviously, when you get to a point like we had in 2008, you're going to get a lot of folks very skittish about that. And a lot of Democrats at that time, probably even some Republicans, said, oh, see, that's why we didn't do the Bush plan. But if you had stayed the course, and now we're here in 2018 and we're 20-some thousand points on the Dow and so forth, you would have gotten a pretty good return by now.
Let me ask you this. Now, Medicare is going to run. Medicare may be it's smaller, but it's more serious because it's running out of money faster. Am I right? So in some sense, it may be even worse than Social Security.
Exactly. Yeah, it's running out of money faster. You've got an aging population. You've got the baby boomers retiring en masse and becoming eligible for Medicare. And so those numbers are just going to get worse and worse.
Maybe you and I aren't healthcare experts. You probably know a lot more than I do. But, here's something I always wondered about. I wonder about why they didn't do it in 65. Maybe the markets weren't that well developed. But you could certainly do it today. What would happen if we scrapped Medicare and bought seniors private insurance? The government bought it in bulk. Why can't they do that? No one's ever explained to me why we can't do that. Maybe in 65, like I said, the health markets weren't there, but why can't you do it today? Any sense?
It's the way we've always done it, and obviously you start tinkering with Medicare, it makes folks a little more skittish than with Social Security. But competition-based health care, it works. It drives prices down and it drives quality up. It's the way that capitalism and the free market work. But people are very afraid. I don't know why people think that the government is the solution to these things, but it's been that system for the past 50-plus years now since Medicare came on the books, and nobody's got the courage to deal with it.
If you look at where the waste is, you look at Social Security, Medicare, the VA, which Trump is tackling now, I think had Medicare and the VA never been created and you bought veterans good private insurance and you bought old people good private insurance and then Social Security, all you have to do is if you had not done nothing more than invest it. The irony is we would never have had a problem because this, frankly, although I would have never created Social Security, the system that Roosevelt set up, had we done nothing more than take advantage of the stock market, would have been rolling in money. We could have increased benefits and given something back to the taxpayers. It's almost absolute worst case scenario. I mean, can you imagine how well Social Security would have been doing if, say, in the mid-30s we had started putting money into the stock market? Oh, my God. I mean, that would have been a good investment for everybody, including the taxpayer.
Oh, yeah, when you think about how exponentially it has grown since then. But it all comes down to the question, and I know you talk about it a lot on this show, Jack, who do you trust with your money? Do you trust yourself more, or do you trust the government more? Well, the people who actually hold the reins of power trust the government more.
Well, I have to encourage our viewers, look, you may be an older person, you may be over 65, you may need Social Security, but you have to agree. Everybody has to agree for the good of the order, for the good of this country, for the good of all of us, that we've got to agree to a solution. Now, that solution can be, let's say, a 2-year increase in the retirement age. Do nothing more than take it up to 67. Let's say, let's throw some rich people off the rolls. Okay, I don't want to do that. They paid for it, but we got to compromise. So let's throw a certain percentage of them off the rolls. Let's invest a certain percentage of Social Security, even if it's just 20%. Even investing 20% of the funds would make a difference. And if you did nothing more than those three things, I think we'd have a better, we could maybe solve the whole problem. Greg Corombos, thank you as always for your insights. Your skills and knowledge extend even to Social Security. I'm sure next time we'll be talking about politics in 2018. Remember, if you want to take it behind the curtain, call us 703-795-5364, 703-795-5364, taking your emails. JackBurkman2016 at Gmail. JackBurkman2016 at Gmail. Same number, same email. If you know anything about the Seth Rich murder mystery, whether you're in Washington, D.C., somewhere else in the U.S., or anywhere in the world, we want to hear from you. And also, if you want to take something before the Congress and you don't know how to do it, we at Behind the Curtain will do it for you. 703-795-5364. And remember, even when we're not on the air, you can hear us and see us at jackburkmanradio.com. And, of course, always at radioamerica.com.